Toy Store, a map that I did not expect to reach where it went. I initially thought that the map would work as a pit design, and well, after testing a few maps of TF2, I come to learn that pit design maps don't exactly work well for King of the Hill. Perhaps if I was doing something more akin to Capture the Flag and such, it could have worked. So when I designed my initial map, I didn't exactly have King of the Hill in mind exactly. But I went ahead and persisted through in creating it. But of course, after that test, that was the way it was, and it didn't go great, but it was a terrific learning experience for me because as I was going about developing in Hammer, I was over time improving on my knowledge for the tool. I went ahead and looked through all the different feedback, and pretty much most of it aligned with how I was feeling about the map myself. I was starting to have doubts about the three-way lane and thought it didn't exactly fit, especially with the type of scale that my map had. It's relatively small compared to a few other maps. So I went ahead and redesigned some things. So I went and made it a two-way lane, which ended up being the savior to my project in the end. But of course, it wasn't exactly one and done fix. It initially had its problem. I was developing through it, and the roof would not create for such a strange reason. So, in my second playtest, I couldn't have the roof sorted out, which ended up, of course, causing a few people to give a few notes about that. But most of the problems still ended up being about the sniper. And that made me come to realize that a lot of the cases, the sniper ends up being one of the most OP characters to play as, depending on the type of players that play it. You could have a very open map, you could have a very condensed map that has still that slight opening, and no matter which type of way you go about it, if a sniper has a good player and good setups and such, it ends up being a major issue. But I persisted. I found some tweaks here and there, some walls adjustments, and of course, re added the roof. And I thought that in this third playtest, it would go well. Surprisingly, it did. It went extremely well, and from the major response that I got, I ended up coming to the realization that I didn't necessarily have to work on it anymore, besides decoration. So I went ahead and worked on it. I changed the 2D boxes to being 3D. I added in more entities and such. But then I realized some issues that happened, and it seemed that it caused some ramps to be considered an invalid geometry. So I tried fixing it, and it ended up causing a lot of issues where the floors didn't connect seamlessly anymore. And I was lost for a bit in understanding what I can do about it, and eventually, after several minutes of me tweaking, hitting fix to see what Hammer does as an automatic way to fix it, I eventually got it to be the best that I could, though it again isn't as seamless as I had hoped it be in the beginning. Other aspects, like the glass in the center area, multiple glass instances actually. One of them is the newest edition of the glass wall, if you can see from these videos. Near the capture point, there is now a glass wall added in between the sight line from the grounded area. And this was added purely because from more recent playtests, after I changed the boxes to props instead of just being textured cubes, the scaling was off. So I went ahead and I tried seeing if I could scale boxes, and for some reason it ended up just making the collision not work anymore, which is a rather strange thing. But I went ahead and reverted it back and decided, I'm just gonna add a wall. So I added this glass wall in, had some tests, found out that it mostly worked out. There's still some areas where snipers may be a bit strong, but that issue would take me a considerable length of time to perfect. And I feel that with the time that I have, I can't necessarily perfect everything. And again, the main problem comes with the fact that I'm not really much of a level designer, I'm more of a technical designer, as I choose to believe I am. I prefer mechanics and such. So I went ahead with the thought process of this map to, instead of just focusing highly on creating a very good design map, I ended up doing rather a 50-50, and I first created the draft and then worked on the art. That's why my map, uh, compared to a few others that I've play tested, have more artistic showcases rather than it being cleverly designed. But even with that, from the amount of experience that I've seen from players, my map was actually very well done, and I was very happy to see that. I've done several bot tests, and at first, when I had my initial drafts, the bots weren't exactly that balanced. So I went ahead and continued making adjustments until when I had what I had with the whole roof and such in my third playtest. I played with bots, and when I had done that, I went ahead and tested it 10 times. I wanted to find out whether or not my map was considered balanced by bot standard. Not that that is a perfect practice. Of course, a lot of things gotta be played by players to understand how balanced a map is. But with how this map went, I'd say the end result with the bot test showcased the best ways for me to make my micro adjustments, like boxes and such. I had to make micro adjustments for where boxes were placed because they were either too close to the wall, but enough that bots would normally think they could walk past it, or in general, tight areas that I should have made bigger. And this also took place with player playtests. There were moments where there were these boxes placed around that would often not let players walk by them when they are scaled in a way that would look like they could fit through. In terms of how I feel about this map, is that I believe strongly that my map is fun and balanced. And any problem that I've seen from this point onwards in playtests have more or less been general problems with the game's design rather than my map. As mentioned in my design documents and all that, some class setups and gimmick tactics can often lead to unfair advantage, and you can definitely get that with some playtests, even if players don't often willingly know that they are being rather unfair for a playtest. However, if I were to make any more adjustments to this map for the future, I struggle in understanding what I'd want to do. Perhaps if I wanted to redo the Toy Store style, I'd go for a much more bigger map design rather than this rather compact small design that this map has had. Because I initially wanted to keep it relatively small to fit the idea that this is a toy store that is very packed and people really, really want this toy. So I went ahead and kept it as a small, tight space to hopefully keep up with that feel that you are very much so being rushed into fighting each other just to get this toy frog for heavy. But I don't know anything else to know besides the main fact that my iterations, I feel like I could have done more. I could have possibly posted a lot more varied 2D designs or possibly more concepts, even. But I feel like the work that I've done was perfectly adequate for what I need to do. But anyways, not to drag this any longer, I'm going to end this commentary here. And that's Toy Store.